What is the most eerie and terrifying thing you've witnessed but no one believes you saw? I was on the scene of a 4-car collision that was caused by a drunk driver. There were several serious injuries and my dad and I were helping people until help came. I got to the main vehicle that had caused the accident and was so close that my hands were on the passenger door, the window was gone and I leaned in. I leaned in because there was no one in the car. I kept looking and there was no one. I'll swear to this day there was no one in that car. I could see the inside, destroyed and empty and full containers of alcohol but nothing else. I leaned back and looked at my dad and he shook his head at me as if to say don't look. The newspaper article the next day reported that the driver and his niece and nephew were all killed in that car and that they did have their seatbelts on. I know there are stories of people's own brain blocking out things like this but I kept looking, trying to see in that moment and even today I can understand it. People don't want to believe it or want to find another explanation. It was clear, middle of the day, in a very open area. No one was thrown from the car. The car was a large late 1970s real metal car. It wasn't really destroyed, it was mainly still intact. My understanding after the accident besides any other injuries was that the driver's head actually impacted his niece's head and killed them both. I'm not sure about the rear passenger. When I was 3, I was playing with my brother on a pier. My parents stopped looking after us for a moment because I guess no one can stay vigilant non-stop. So with my brother we start playing climbing into boats and jumping from one to another, and of course, because I was very small I missed, fell into the water and almost drowned. My father suddenly remembered that he had children just in time to come back on the pier and to see me fall into the water and ran to fish me out. This story is my very first memory. I don't remember everything but I remember the hand coming down to grab me. What I can't explain is that I also clearly remember a woman with green hair trying to pull me into the deep. When I was around 9, walking with my friend from her place to my place. Our places were like a 10-minute walk apart. Some grown bald guy in all black with sunglasses on started following us. After 2 minutes of him following us we just kinda started crossing the street, walking to another street, etc. This dude kept following us and every time we looked behind us he kept pretending to be checking the soles of his shoes, like he stepped in dog poop. He was super close to us the whole time, so we just ran. Got to my place and we both started crying. We had an active imagination so my mom questioned us if it was actually 100% true, and when we said yes, she called the police. They took a statement but nothing came of it. A few years later in the news they were looking for a child molester and the face sketch looked exactly the same. It wasn't something I saw but rather something I heard. I was putting my 4-year-old son to sleep for the night. I had just finished reading to him and he had already dozed off so I just laid there in his bed for a little while. I heard his pull-string Henry doll go off. It was laying on the floor next to the bed. It said, "Boy, am I glad to see you." For those who don't know, the Henry doll is like the doll from the movie. He has a few little sayings and he says a different one every time you pull the string. It startled me but I didn't think too much of it. I figured his string had gotten snagged up or something. I was just about to get out of bed when he did it again. Not a different saying either, it said "Boy am I glad to see you again," twice in a row, which doesn't happen. He says a few different sayings but always in the same order. This time I picked it up, took a look at the string, and saw that it wasn't snagged or anything. I was holding it in my hand, about to set it back down when it did it again. "Boy, am I glad to see you." That freaked me out. A lot. It didn't help that I was home alone with my sleeping kid. I literally looked the doll in the face and said out loud, "Okay, you're freaking me out, Henry," and dropped it. He stopped after that. We still have Henry. He's never done anything weird since. If you pull his string, he says all of his sayings in the correct order. Everyone shrugs off my Henry experience, but it was really creepy, I swear. Don't mess with fools. It was late at night and I couldn't sleep. I decided to go out to look at the stars to get sleepy. When I went close to the door I heard a huge bang like something big was falling coming from outside the flat, behind my door. I went with caution and looked through the little hole on the door to see what was happening. I saw 2 people just standing there outside the lift, one of them holding something. I couldn't tell what it was but they didn't friendly. I looked some more and then it was when I saw that there was a person besides them on the floor, not moving or seemingly breathing. I heard them saying something to one another. I didn't really catch what though before they started dragging the person on the floor out of the flat and into a van before speeding off like crazy. I tried to tell my family but they said it was just a nightmare. I know what I saw. When I was a kid, around 11 years old, I was spending the night with a friend. Of course when it was bedtime we didn't go to sleep like we were supposed to, we were just laying there talking, when a man opened the door and looked around. He was a tall white male, wearing only his jeans, and was clean shaven with short hair. Of course we acted like we were asleep. When he closed the door we started talking about how we were surprised that her dad had shaved the beard he'd had for so long. However, the next morning at breakfast her dad still had his beard. We both saw it, so it wasn't a dream. Her parents thought we made it up, but why? Two of them for me. One as a kid, we lived in this smallish town and our house was pretty close to one of those huge sluices next to a large canal. However, the embankment was pretty high, so apart from the normal road there was a small stone staircase that went up from our street directly onto the embankment. The sluice itself however was always used by druggies and illegal parties etc. Not a big deal 99% of the time since the houses below were never bothered. Cue me being 13 coming back home from sports training and I see this shape at the bottom of the stone staircase with a massive splatter of red around his head. Turns out one of the druggies while high as a kite fell down the steps and ended up falling right on his head, splitting his skull and spread most of his viscera across the street. Had to tell my parents and they called the police. Second one is from not that long ago when I was coming home from my internship at a hospital and since I used public traffic had get off at a station to take a different train. While waiting at the platform the girl in front of me suddenly jumped in front of the train resulting in something I can only unfortunately describe as meat confetti. Afterwards I called up my girlfriend who I was living with at the time, still do, to explain that I wouldn't be able to get home since someone jumped in front of the train. Now in the Netherlands it's not uncommon to have delays in the entire train system due to these events. Apparently I didn't sound overly emotional or anything, shock, so she just assumed that somewhere on a different platform someone jumped in front of the train so my train couldn't leave. So she went her martial arts lessons and I was absolutely stunned that someone so close to you could be so casual about such an event happening to a loved one. When I finally did end up getting home basically broke down and it was only when calling her again that she understood what had actually happened and immediately rushed home. Only later learned that the girl turned out to be a 19-year-old student with severe psychosis from a coworker who knew her from the school she was at. I was 12, and no one but me and my dog were in my apartment. I was listening to my music with my dog on my bed, my room closed. My door had a see-through glass part on the head part of the door. My dog started barking really loudly and I brushed it off as him hearing my neighbors that were loud usually. But when he got up to bark at the door it gave me a bad feeling inside my chest so I patted him on the head waiting for him to calm down. 10 minutes pass, he lays down next to my bed calm. And then another 10 minutes pass, I continue listening to music when my dog curled up growling but in a scared way this time. Turning his head on the door I looked up the top of the clear door part and saw a lady full white. It sounds cliche but her hair was white, and so was her dress and skin. She passed to the room next to mine really fast. I didn't see her face, but it scared me. No one believes me, but I did see her and I didn't leave my room then. I just curled up under my blanket with my dog close to me. I haven't seen her since and now I moved. But it was really weird. I recall as a younger child hearing a lady inside those walls singing. My mom said it was the pipes probably but the melody of the noise didn't sound like a Was staying the night with a friend one time and I woke up earlier than anyone, so I went to the living room and watched some TV. About an hour into it I was overcome by this horrible feeling I never could describe. I looked beside me, and there was a shadowy figure standing next to the chair I was sitting in, bent over with its face about 2 feet away from mine. I utterly froze on place and slammed my eyes shut. I sat there for what seemed like hours until my friend's dad came walking into the living room and found me in the chair breathing heavily and sweating. He called my name and it gave me the strength to open my eyes and run over to him. In June 2012, I saw a plane crash in the Nevada desert. I was installing road closed markers in Quinn Canyon, about 150 miles north of Las Vegas. A KC-135 tanker was circling far to the south, with 3 small, single-engine jets trailing behind. This was not unusual. A refueling wing flew out of Nellis AFB, and we'd see one fly overhead about once a week, often refueling F-15s headed for Dugway. As I was watching, one of the contrails from the smaller jets suddenly cut out, and I could see the aircraft glint in the sunlight as it tumbled from the sky. I did not see the crash itself. The falling plane disappeared behind a distant mountain. I assume it crashed far to the south, somewhere in the test range. There was no notice in the media. Flying over Calgary, Canada on an international flight, 30,000 plus feet. Staring out of the window and saw in the distance a round white object, seemed to have 4 jet engines pointing downwards that were slowly rotating around it. Friend sat next to me saw it as well. It disappeared behind the wing, and as we waiting for it to appear on the other side, it was gone. Asked the pilot what it was as we left the plane, and he looked at me like I was an idiot. Stop telling people about it now, as everyone just rolls their eyes. Not saying it was aliens or anything, but for weeks I searched online to try and get some kind of idea what it was. And nothing. So once many years ago, when I was a teenager, getting high and drunk, and whatnot, I was leaving my cousin's apartment late at night. I always walked home late. Anyway, they lived on the top floor, and as I start to descend the bottom of the stairs, I see this little toy Jeep, the kind that kids ride, the battery-operated ones. It was always out there along with bikes and other toys for the other kids that lived there. Well, anyway, I swear to God, as I get to the bottom and from the angle of the stairs, I only caught a glimpse of the Jeep, but I saw enough to see that the front of the little Jeep is slowly moving in a circle, almost as if someone was pushing it around and around. Until this day I tell myself that I was probably drunk and high, and that I just imagined it, and honestly that's probably what it was, but it felt so real. I remember that I stood there for a few seconds and then I turned around and ran back up the stairs. I went back inside and told everyone about the little Jeep. Obviously no one believed me, and even now when I think about it I don't believe it myself. So right around that time my mom had just passed away, I had started smoking, drinking and doing drugs. There was a lot of negativity around my life at that time, so maybe it was some negative energy or even the devil playing tricks with my mind, but regardless of what it was, it scared the hell out of me. So basically, I was around 8 to 9 years old. My friend was sleeping over and we playing on the floor with my dolls or whatever. Out of the blue, my radio turns on and completely scared the hell out of us. When I say radio though, I mean like a static, really loud static. Obviously, being young we screamed for my mom. She came upstairs just after it stopped. She told us to stop being silly and that we had probably knocked it while playing. We calmed down again and carried on playing with my dolls. We were in the same place on the floor as the last time, which is neither near the power switch or radio, and it turned on again. It was static, like before. We freaked out again but had to go down for dinner or something. When we went back upstairs we were just chilling in my bed and watching TV when the light turns off. We were at the opposite end of the room to the light switch. Let's just say we didn't sleep that much that night. Walking home from a friend's house back when I was in high school. On the way home I had to pass a cemetery. When I got there, a lady, who I assumed was homeless or schizophrenic, was outside the gate pacing back and forth mumbling to herself. After a while she started screaming in what I can only explain as tongues and began to wildly flail her arms in the air. Out of nowhere it got extremely windy and then a lightning bolt came down in the distance. Freaked me right out and I ran home. Signed on MySpace and someone posted asking why there was lightning but no rain or anything. To this day I believe most people who have crazy stories after what I experienced that night, and how I can tell people think I'm crazy when I retell the story. My dad, my sister, and I were on a road trip once, and at night while we were on the highway, he stopped the car at an abandoned petrol station so he could pee, and while he went to do his business I decided to quickly explore, while my sister was sleeping, so I could move my legs a bit before staying in the car for more hours. Suddenly when I went to the other side of the petrol station, I heard faint giggles and a beg for help, but it was all muffled. I peeked from the corner of the wall and saw an approximately 40-year-old man with a bloody knife in his hand while looking down at an unconscious 20-year-old girl. I rushed away, shocked and traumatized, as I was only 15 and my dad said he was waiting for me. I got in the car and we left. I never talked about it to anyone except my sister, but she just laughed. One night, When I was about 5 or 6 I was sleeping in my room with my brother. This memory is kind of foggy, but I remember hiding under my blanket and peeking out and seeing these tall pale cartoonish characters that looked similar to the evil mom from Caroline. They were staring at me and making jagged motions, and I kept peeking in and out of the blanket, and I remember vividly seeing fake-looking neon bugs crawling all around inside my blanket and strange dark creatures all around my room. I'm very certain it wasn't a dream because all of my room was exactly the way it was and nothing was off or missing. I might have somehow eaten something strange, but you must also note that my brother was there too and he remembers having the same experience as me.